Hey guys, it's been like 5 years, but I'm still live. Anyways, today I wanted to fix the cube game mode again. I want to add the ship game mode and maybe even more if we have the time. So we're going to start off by selecting the player, going to the rigid body here and putting the collision detection to continuous. Then it just looks a little less janky. We're also going to change the rotation a little bit. It's fine right now, but it could use a little bit of work. We start by removing the ×5 here and adding another parameter, which is a float. We'll say this number times time, delta time. The number will be in the description to spare your sanity. And in this way, if we play, then you'll immediately see it just feels a little bit more like Geometry Dash, feels a little less janky. So we're also going to be changing this line of code, which it checks if you're on the ground. And why is this currently wrong? Well, if you look at it here, this red dot is basically how we're checking if the player's on the ground. And in this case, the player wants to jump, right? And we're on an edge, but the script thinks that the player's not on the ground because the red dot is not touching anything. But obviously the player is on the ground. So how do we fix this? Well, the best way to fix this is by just making it a box instead, like this. So that when the player is on edge like this, then the script does know that it's touching the ground. We'll start up by changing this to overlap box because we want a box. And now we'll do vector2 dot right times 1.1 vector plus vector2 dot up times the ground check radius. Then we'll just do 0 and then the layer mask, which is ground mask here. And now we're going to put this here into a separate function. Let's do that here. We'll just say void cube. And the reason why we're doing this is because it will help us a lot in the future, because then we can just add a new void called ship, wave, ball, whatever. So we'll copy our cube code here and we'll paste it in our function here. So we're going to do invoke and then current game mode to string. Yeah, and then for the time we're going to use 0. So we're calling a function called our current game mode, which in this case is cube. So we're calling cube, which is this over here, in 0 seconds. We just want to call it on the same frame, so that's why we do 0 seconds. And if our current game mode would be ship, then it would run the function ship, which currently doesn't exist. So that should probably give an error. Let's say if we add that function. Doesn't do anything right now, it's just gonna make our code a lot cleaner. We're also going to remove the gravity enum here. And if we do this, we are going to get a few errors actually. So let's fix those. We're going to make this a boolean instead of that enum. And here we're also going to run into an issue because we cannot convert bool to gravity. In our movement, we'll go to our function here and we'll change this to an integer. And now we have to convert a boolean into an integer. Here, 1 and then colon and -1. And so if our boolean would be true, say 1, and if it would be false, then we'd say -1. Kind of weird syntax, I also just recently found it out, but pretty cool, right? So now if we go to our portal, I already changed it so that we can test out the gravity. So if it's false, then the gravity should be flipped. And as you can see, that works. This is just way nicer than an enum. I don't know why I did that. So now we're going to add another function. We have a function that checks if we're on the ground, but now we're going to add a function that checks if we're touching a wall, because if you're touching a wall, then you should just die, right? The function that I wrote is a little long though, so I'm just going to paste it in. You can go through it if you want, just way too much for me to remember. So next up, we're going to limit the player's Y velocity. This is how the physics of the average game works. The Y velocity endlessly goes down as the object falls. that is before you land on another object. In Geometry Dash, however, the y velocity stays constant after a while, making falling feel a little smoother and natural for its gameplay. The y velocity caps the moment the player's y coordinates matches up with the y coordinates on the frame the player starts jumping. Luckily, I already measured it, and it's roughly -24.2. Now it's pretty easy. We check if our y velocity is below -24.2, and if it is, we put it back to -24.2. So let's implement that in our little movement script. So back into our movement script, we're going to add a new function. It starts with an if statement. If rb.velocity.y is below -24.2, then we'll say rb.velocity equals to new vector 2, and in that we'll have rb.velocity.x and -24.2. Now we can just remove these curly brackets here, just to make it look a little cleaner, and there you go. So now we're just one bug away from adding the ship game mode, and I'll show you what that bug is. If I copy the ground and put it a little up like this, and remember we still have a portal here that flips our gravity. Now if we play this, then you can see even though our gravity is flipped and we're on the ground, it just rotates constantly and you can't jump. So we're gonna have to fix this by obviously changing this function over here. But in order to fix it, we first have to keep track of the current gravity scale. So int gravity like this, which by default will be 1. It's either 1 or -1, and in here we'll add a new line. We'll say gravity with the capital is equal to lowercase gravity like this, and now in our OnGround function over here, we'll change the position a little bit. We'll start off with vector plus vector3.up, and then minus vector3.up times gravity -1 divided by -2. And now going to the cube, we'll change the add force function. We'll times our number by gravity. Where we rotate, we times it by gravity as well. So now let's see if that works. And as you can see, we can now jump and it rotates fine, so everything works. So now we're going to switch over to the ship game mode. So this is how it works. If the player isn't holding down the left mouse button, the gravity scale is set to about 4.3. However, if the player does hold down the left mouse button, then the gravity scale will be set to -4.3. With a negative gravity scale, the player falls upwards, giving the illusion of flight. And of course, the ship will fall down again if the player releases the left mouse button. So let's implement that in our little movement script. Okay, so back into our movement script, we're going to start with void ship, like so. And here, we'll start with an if statement, if input.getMouseButton, and this is just 0. And now we'll set the gravity scale of our rigid body to -4.3 something, and else the gravity scale will be +4.3 something. At the very core, this is already basically the ship game mode. Now we can also add some rotation. Transfer.Euler. Then we'll just say 0, 0, and rb.velocity.y times 2, like this. So let's see if that works. And yeah, this basically works, except as you can see, the upside down portal has absolutely no effect on our ship. That's because the system of our ship is dependent on the gravity scale, but so is the portal, so it kind of fights each other. And we can fix that with a single line here. We just say rb.gravityscale is rb.gravityscale times gravity. And now if we run this, you'll see if we go through the portal, if I now click, I go down, and if I don't click, I go up, instead of the other way around. So that was all of the things I wanted to add for today. If you have any further questions or problems, let me know. And in the next episode, we'll add more game modes like the ball game mode or the wave. So I'll see you next time.